Hey everyone, welcome to the Grinding Station. Here, we will be discussing our tournament grinds, our experiences within the format, and all things CDH. We're your hosts, I'm C9 River,
And I'm Morgan.
and today we're going to be discussing 5 cards each that we feel should see more play in CDH. Before we get into the spice, is there anything crazy going on for you this week, Morgan?
Not really. We had our Friendsgiving at my house this weekend, so I was kind of absorbed into that, getting the house ready, having people over. Um, I did get to play some CDH. We had some games that we got in. It was pretty fun. I played Blue Farm. I played some Sisay and Italian. Picked up Matt's lists. It was interesting. I got a little bit more familiar with some decks that I think are very good in the format. So
Nice, nice. I have not played any CDH still. Um, I don't know. I think really it's just my schedule. It's kind of hard for me to find games uh, because of like the free time I do have before going into work with my new schedule. But I did hear that T Bone and Ben, friends of the channel, went to the tournament in Bedford,
mm-hmm.
and Ben told me that it was a lot different than the last time we went because he said that it felt like there was way more turbo and a lot less blue decks.
Well, a lot of my group didn't end up getting to go. T-Bone did go. Um, he brought Val, another one of our buddies, and Val ended up getting like seventh. I think he got paid like $40.
Oh, that's not bad.
But yeah, they were saying that it was like three slicer decks. He's like, yeah, it's so toxic, bro. There's three slicer decks. I know there was some amount of Kinnan because T-Bone plays Kinnan and Val was on Kinnan. And I know Niv Mizzet and the Grixis mid range deck that Ben plays was there. So
Yeah, it sounded a little wild. He was talking to me about it last night, and man, I'm very glad I did not go to that one. Not
really,
because not because of the store or anything. I hate playing in tournaments where there isn't a lot of like we kind of covered it already on the responsibility episode, but when there's not blue at a table and I'm the only blue player, there like is no responsibility in the game anymore because like it all just hinges on me and everyone like just doesn't care if they lose because their goal
everyone
is
just
to win
makes
or
you have
lose.
it every time.
Yeah, and it's kind of frustrating, but
It's okay. I've been there. I've done that.
but on the bright side, I'm hoping I will have more time to do tournaments at the start of next year. Although I'm hearing two different things from my work, I'm either going to be doing a lot of overtime and working a lot of Saturdays, or overtime's going to cut back and we're not going to do that many Saturdays. So I'm still going to obviously do this. I'm still going to stay in touch with like the tournament scenes and see what's going on, take in tournament data. Um, but my playing might become significantly less. Although I'm going to try and start getting more games in, I just need to find a more consistent, good play group.
I think I'm gonna get some better equipment to play, like a better webcam and stuff.
I do plan on getting a webcam. I think this next time I get paid. Um, I'm probably just gonna whip out the credit card and buy it now, um, so I can
Heyo.
quit telling myself that I'm going to. I have a few other things I need to buy too, and they're relatively cheap. So there's really no reason for me not to get a webcam, so I can start like trying to play more. So especially webcam games seem to be like easier to find than like cockatrice, which
Oh,
is
they're
what
so
I
much
normally play
easier.
on.
The webcam games pop off almost everywhere I see. I think it's just people want to play with their actual cardboard or
Yeah,
paper in front of their cardboard. But
That makes sense. It's also still more real.
Right, right. It feels like Magic. That's why I don't play like Arena or MTGO. It doesn't feel like Magic to me.
Yeah, I'm only partial to Trice because that's
If free.
one free and two it was like kind of something that helped push CDH during COVID.
That is true.
Um, but
Your big true thing.
all right, with all that, let's talk about some of more so me spicy card choices. So Morgan and I chose 5 cards each that we felt should see more play in the format of CDH specifically, obviously CDH channel. Um, as a side note, I would like people to know, listen to this, um, that these are our opinions. This is not us saying, oh, this will be me saying that these cards should see play and you're dumb for not playing them. But this is not us genuinely like thinking these are like going to warp the format or just so like overpowered. Um, Everything that we speak about is obviously going to be like our opinions, and honestly, it's just that our opinions. So, but with that out of the way, Morgan, you want to give me your first card?
So I didn't rank mine because all of mine are kind of fringe. They want to be seen playing some decks, but not every deck. So the first card that really came to mind for me was Touch the Spirit Realm. Um, I think that the way that Touch the Spirit Realm interacts with the format right now is very powerful. Having a channel ability to temporarily get rid of a stacks piece like a Dranith or Collector Roof so you can do what you need to do and then it comes back at the end of the turn is very powerful. Or you can play it for its like enchantment and just cast it and it can get rid of One Rings, it can get rid of like Talions, Tymnas, Kroms if you need them. It's just very powerful removal spell. I think it should see more play. I'm thinking about I'm thinking about trying to find a slot for it in blue form. I'm debating on what card I want to take out for it. Um, but I think it should see a lot more play than it does right now. I know it's seen play in like Dawnwaker and some slower decks that are looking to get into those gummed up board states, but I think that a lot of decks should consider it just because it can be an uncounterable way to get rid of a stacks piece. I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, I actually 100% agree. I really like Touch the Spirit Realm personally. Um, One of the things that I actually really love about this card. Um, so for those of you listening, Touch the Spirit Realm is a mono white enchantment uh, with you can pay 2 and a white to cast it normally as an enchantment, and it says when Touch the Spirit Realm enters the battlefield, exile up to one target artifact or creature until Touch the Spirit Realm leaves the battlefield. Then it has a channel effect, which is an ability where you pay 1 and a white, you discard Touch the Spirit Realm, you exile target artifact or creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. The thing I really like about Touch the Spirit Realm that I think is like an underrated way to play this card is actually with Thoracle. Um, this works really well with bouncing your Thoracle um, as the um, channel effect.
Oh, let's
So let's say
go
like
again.
yeah, you go off and then you just have Touch the Spirit Realm in play. Most people will just leave you alone. They're not going to touch your Thoracle. And you can kind of just touch the Spirit Realm your Thoracle when somebody else tries to win again with no cards in your library, or if they try to kill you or whatever it is. Um, it's honestly like a really good card. I have seen a lot of Touch the Spirit Realm uh, online, but I do not see this card in tournaments, which is actually surprising because again, this card is like really good.
It is very powerful. Okay, what's your first card?
So mine is actually I cheated. Mine is kind of an archetype of card, uh, more so than a specific card. Um, there's actually three technically in this one, um, but my first one is actually Stifle Effects, um, specifically Trickbind, Tail's End, and Tishana's Tidebender. Um, I think Stifle Effects, specifically Trickbind, are really good. People have complained for a very long time about Thoracle and how hard it is to interact with, but um, a lot of that's also like Thoracle wins happen when people usually don't have interaction. And stifle effects like Trickbind are a way to kind of mitigate that. Um, you don't need interaction anymore, which is like kind of niche. I get it, but I've been loving Trickbind for a while now. The ability to uncounterably shut off my opponent's win attempt. Um, you can also Trickbind storm triggers, which is very important, um, because the ability to stop a brain freeze. I just had a brain freeze myself. Um, is pretty big. Obviously, they can still mill the 3 cards, but if you're like kind of playing correctly, as long as you have this and another like counter spell in hand, you can usually get around that type of effect. Although usually if they're casting Brain Freeze, they're kind of already winning the game. They're usually set up. But yeah, Trickbind is just really good. For me personally, I really like this effect.
Yeah, it's a very powerful effect. It also does hit channel, which I was just talking about. Channel is an insanely powerful way to interact in the format because it gets around counter spells, and this says, "Nah, I'm still gonna counter it." your channel effect is just useless now.
Yeah, specifically Boseiju and Odawara, which are the two big ones. I have been got by Odawara and Boseiju a lot. For some reason, they love printing target Planeswalker on cards, which is annoying. Um, when my commander is a Planeswalker. Um, but yeah, uh, I have also stopped like the Seiju effects with this before. Or the other thing I like about Trickbind is the ability to stop yourself from dying from your Pact of Negation,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a trigger, and you can Trickbind it. You can also Trickbind your One Ring trigger if you're going to die. I've done that before to still win the game. And it's also Trickbind specifically is really good against Sisay, Najila, Kinnan, um, anything, Kenrith, anything with an activated ability, um, to shut them off from their turn. Thrasios, um, and the big one as well. Although it doesn't, this combo obviously doesn't see as much play as it used to. Is ISO Rev. Um, this was always really good for me against ISO Rev decks because usually they are tapping out to do it, and then not only are they tapping out, their ISO Front Scepter is just tapped at that point, and even if they could untap it, they can't reactivate it, which is like pretty nice.
I mean, yeah, stifle effects I think have always had a very unique spot in the format where I think a lot of decks could benefit from using like one. But also it's hard, right? Because I feel like people see that they're like, "Oh, I have a stifle and I lost to an actual spell being cast," and then they just like take it out for a counter spell. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, "No, your stifle isn't really a counter spell necessarily. I wouldn't think of it as a counter spell in your counter spell package." I would think of it as more along the lines of a removal spell rather than a counter spell.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, obviously, the mono blue player or Dimir control player, it's never hard for me to slot these types of effects in. I actually used to play Nimble Obstructionist. Speaking of channel type effects, having the ability to discard and stop somebody's win attempt without having to cast a spell is really nice. Although 3 mana is steep, but yeah, I've never liked players taking stifle effects out or just not playing them. For the longest time, I would tell people like, "Hey, like Trickbind's really good. Why are we not playing this in CDH?" This is when I like was getting more into CDH specifically, and one of the big things was, at the time, Thoracle didn't exist, and so there were things you could shut off, but for the most part, it was like Brea, Tasigur, when Thrasios came out, Thrasios, and people weren't too keen on trick binding that type of stuff. I love trick bind because during Flash Hulk meta, it meant that your Hulk didn't resolve, like your Hulk trigger. I just had the ability to stop it, and like obviously letting Flash resolve and then trick binding the trigger was neat because they just can't respond to the trick bind. And people used to tell me all the time this card was bad, stifle effects are bad, we shouldn't be playing them. And now I'm starting to see it pick up a little more steam, specifically in tournament play, because I think tournament grinders are realizing the worth of the card more so than like casual CDH players. But yeah, this is one of those pet cards for me. If I'm in blue, I usually play Trickblind.
Yeah, cool.
What about your second card, Morgan?
So it's another channel card. I really like channel. Uh, my second card is Colossal Sky Turtle.
Oh yeah.
This card is a house. It has not one, but two channel abilities. So Colossal Sky Turtle is a 6/5 enchantment creature turtle for 4 generic green, green, and blue. So it's 7 mana for a 6/5 flyer with Ward 2. And it has Channel. 2 and a green. Discard Colossal Sky Turtle. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. And then Channel. 1 and a blue. Discard Colossal Sky Turtle. Return target creature to its owner's hand. This card is insane. It's regrowth when you need it to be. I can get any card in my graveyard to my hand. That's fine. That's a role playing card, right? And then you have the removal side. You're like, okay, now I can get rid of a stack speed temporarily, which is why I was enjoying. This is why I like um, Touch the Spirit Realm. But also, you can just get rid of any combo piece. If something is needed on board for a combo, like an Argok Salvagers or like a Chainer for Crick decks, you'd be like, okay, 2 mana, bounce your dude, you don't win the game. You can also bounce your own Dockside with it. You can bounce your own stuff with this card. It is awesome. When I played Thrasios Bruce, when I played Dawnwaker, this card was in my list for sure. Every iteration, no matter what, I was like, this card is too good not to have. I think that the fact that if I really need it to be, it's a 7 mana 6/5 flyer. That can be relevant in some games in our format. You know? It has so many use cases that it's very powerful in, and I almost never see in decks. Like I see it in Kinnan lists. I think Kinnan lists are starting to play it a little bit more, but I don't see it much outside of those lists. I think it's just so insanely powerful to be able to almost uninteractably get stuff back from your graveyard, and bounce creatures is just so powerful. Like we were just talking about how stifle effects are just now starting to see some more play, and that's the only thing that hits this stuff. Like the channel ability on the Sky Turtle and touch. It's just so insanely powerful to be able to limit your opponent's agency on your, like, to be able to interact with your game plan.
Yeah. Um, I think one of the big upsides for me with this card specifically is actually the ability to hit um, Grand Abolisher or Grand Abolisher-esque effects.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be more printings of those types of effects. Grand Abolisher, Myrel, the new Axolotl dude, or not Axolotl, the cat
Kutzel.
dude. Yeah, Kutzel. Um, these effects, seems like Wizards likes printing them. So Colossal Sky Turtle just kind of says, "Oh yeah, go off, do your thing. I'm now going to bounce this at the crucial moment where you thought you weren't going to get interacted with, and here's interaction." Um, it also helps open your opponents up to interacting with certain things. Having the ability to be like, "Hey, they can't stop me from interacting with this piece on their board. If they go to play it again, counter it." I think is also really big.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah, so I really do like this card. Channel, like you said, channel effects are just so powerful, and the most important part about this card is, um, it's a turtle,
It's a turtle.
which is like, dude, turtle tribal in
Tur-
CDH. It's gonna be a
Turtle
thing one day.
tribal. I'd be playing this and Archelaus in the same deck.
You could, 100%.
No, I really do like Colossal Sky Turtle. I think it should see a lot more play than it currently does. I always talk about this with my play group. I think that Colossal Sky Turtle is a role player, right? Um, and I think that it does its job every time. It does what you need it to do. It's reliable, and that's kind of the glue that holds your deck together. I think a lot of people build their decks as like 100 straight bangers, and then their decks don't function very well because they're just playing a banger and then another one that doesn't interact very well with, like, their cards are all just bangers and they don't interact necessarily as well as some of the role players would interact, right?
Yeah,
Like I think Archivist of Ogma is very similar in that ability. It's just it's a 2-mana 2/2 that draws me some cards and is my 10-minute attacker, blocker when I need it to be. It's a role player. It does the exact same thing every time. I know its ceiling and I know its floor, right? And they're very close together. That's how I feel about Colossal Sky Turtle.
yeah. This card is insanely good.
Yep.
I agree.
So River, what's your second card?
This is gonna get me a lot of flack. This is a card that I have been talking about for a little bit. Um, Outside of our podcast. Um, I think people. So the counterspell suite has always been very low to the ground in terms of CNC and what it hits because of greedy players and because of the way Turbo used to get played. This why Dispel sees a lot of play. Obviously, Dispel can hit counterspells. Really big reason why it sees play. Um, you have Spell Pierce for early non-creature spells that are being played. However, I think with how the format is shaping up, I think Spell Pierce is a card that looks worse and worse. And I don't like Spell Pierce. I've been taking it out of my decks. Um, and the card I've been replacing it with is Mana Leak. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, but River, making them pay one more mana, how does that matter? Well, let me tell you. So, for those of you that don't know what Mana Leak does, Mana Leak is a 2 CMC spell. You pay 1 and a blue for an instant that says counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. The thing I like about this is the first 3 words, which is counter target spell. Mana Leak hits everything. It is never a dead card. Only time Mana Leak is bad is the same time Spell Pierce is bad. Mana Leak is only bad the later the game goes. But I think people forget how steep 3 mana truly is. The amount of times I have cast Mana Leak on somebody and they've been forced to use interaction on Mana Leak because they can't, free interaction, mind you, because they can't afford to pay that 3 mana and still do what they want to on their turn, is astronomically high. The people forget just how little mana we truly work with within our format specifically, unless it's going to late game. Most of the time, on most board states that I see, depending on how late the game is going, is most people are usually running on 5 to 7 mana at most given times, especially mid to late game. Take 3 of that away. From 5, they're left with 2. And if they've already used mana to cast a spell, let's say they go to cast a Dockside and they want mana off of it, they really have to pay 3 mana for now a 5 mana ritual, essentially. So they have to try and make that rate back. Usually they're not. Depending also on the groups you're playing in and what decks you're playing against. Obviously, Dockside is an insane card. The thing with Mana Leak 2 is a lot of people tap out for specific spells that I think they don't realize they're tapping out for. So like commanders, somebody goes to play a Tivit, you can Mana Leak. Most of the time they've tapped out. This is the same with a Najeela or a Sisay. Not the same for a Kinnan. That card is like, don't counter it because it's just going to get recasted. But
Depends on what point in the game you're at.
Yeah, if you constantly are removing Kinnan, counter it when it gets cast. If all you're doing is countering Kinnan, maybe not. But yeah, Mana Leak is I think a lot stronger than I think people give it credit for. And maybe it's just a matter of time either before people see that or until people kind of move away from allowing people to pay for their spells types of counters. Obviously, Spell Pierce and Mana Leak. I think there are definitely better cards than Mana Leak, but I'm working under the assumption that if you are on a counterspell suite and low colors, so again, I speak primarily from low color control decks to mono blue, and we get kind of all the interactive suites. So if you are already on, counterspell, mana drain, delay, all these cards that are hard, what I like to consider hard counterspells that hit anything, I think Mana Leak is just better over Spell Pierce in that regard.
It's fair. It's fair. I think Mana Leak is a weird one for me, right? Because the jump from 1 to 2 is a big jump. I don't know. I mean, the jump from 2 to 3 mana to pay is also a huge jump. It makes their Dockside cost 5 mana, if you want to counter the Dockside. It makes their Breach cost 5 mana, it makes their Thoracle or their Tainted cost 3 more. I mean, it's powerful. I think that if I'm playing a 2-mana counterspell, I want it to be like Delay. Like, I'm not playing Delay currently. I'm not sure how I feel about the Mana Leak situation right now.
Yeah, I'm always under the assumption you're in low color. So if you're in like
Yeah.
blue farm and you're looking for hard counter spells, you should just play delay. Or usually you're on double blue pip anyways in a deck like blue farm because like you can and do play Thor. So like being on counterspell or mana drain isn't the worst thing in the world if you're looking for hard counter effects. So like Mana Leak's less good in high color variance decks. The good thing about Mana Leak though is it is only a anything in a blue, which kind of does set it aside from cards like Mana Drain and Counterspell. Um, because obviously setting up 2 blue pips, one is telling if your opponents are smart, but also being able to hold up an additional blue for a potential other non-free counterspell can be pretty big. Also, Mana Leak's downside is pitching it to another counterspell, which is like not the worst place to be. But yeah, if you're like if you're like in 5 color, I don't think there's a reason to play Mana Leak. If you're in 2 color, like if you're a Dimir deck or an Izzet deck, um, I think Mana Leak becomes significantly better. Also, if you're in mono blue, not to play this over Spell Pierce. It is very rare your opponents are winning turn 1. Nowadays, you're almost guaranteed to have another land drop, and with that extra land drop, or even with your fast mana, being able to Mana Leak something, and then also potentially play another interactive spell is very big.
It's true.
Also, being able to tap rocks plus a colored source, like rocks plus land for Mana Leak, plus keeping open a single land for a Pongify or another effect like a Dispel, I think it's really good. But I totally get why. Like, I've had a lot of conversations around Mana Leak, like I said in the past, so I totally get why people don't like running it. It is feels bad, especially if you're like, it's kind of like the Stifle thing you brought up, right? Where it feels really bad when all you have is Mana Leak and they just have the mana to pay. But my argument usually is that same feeling is there with Spell Pierce, but even worse, where, I'm going to cast Dockside. Well, my Spell Pierce doesn't counter Dockside. Okay, cool. Well, I'm now going to counter this other thing that Spell Pierce doesn't counter. And you're like, fuck, okay, well, I just have Spell Pierce and nothing else to do with it. Or, like a Spell Pierce, like, mid to late game feels really bad when it's like Rhystic Study. You're like,
Oh.
and then they're like, okay, cool, I'll pay the 2 mana. And then you're like, fuck, I just got this out of my hand for no reason.
Yeah, it's very weird. We live in a world where the format is going to later and later turns, which I like. I think that's fun.
Same.
But it's just a very weird place to be for some cards that have seen play in the past. I think they're going to get phased out. There's just going to be a big ebb and flow. It's kind of how it goes, right?
Yeah. Side tangent. Why is Spell Pierce, the foil Spell Pierce, why does it cost so much?
From what set?
From Zendikar. It's like
OG Zendikar?
Oh, this is the TCG player, correct. The listed median price is still almost $20.
From OG Zendikar?
Yeah.
Because it's an old foil.
Yeah, which I don't know, just common, man. This card's been reprinted into the dirt.
That's how foils used to be, and now they make cards go down in value.
Yeah. True. Alright, so what about your third card, Morgan?
So, we've talked a lot about Grand Abolisher effects. I've been testing.
Know where this is going.
Yeah, he knows where it's going. I've been testing my Rel, Shield of Argive, in Blue Farm. After testing it, it will be staying in. It is a permanent addition to the deck. I believe it should be played on more decks now that I've seen it in action. The ability to have another Grand Abolisher in your deck is so pivotal in this format, right? We saw Cutzel get printed. I think that card's insane as well. I think that if you have the ability, you should be running like 5 Grand Abolisher effects. Or silence effects. It's just, you can't win without a silence effect, it feels like, because of all of the breaches, or not all of the breaches, all of the Rhystic Studies, Mystic Remoras, One Rings. People just have a lot of cards in hand right now. So having the ability to go, your cards in hand don't matter. You can't interact now, is so insanely powerful. and then bonus points if you can get that card onto the board uncounterably in some form or fashion. Um, like Yisan searches if you're in a slower deck, potting into it, Cavern of Souls, um, like a Destiny Spinner. All of these effects are just at a premium right now, in my opinion, because of the fact that people are holding so much counter magic and removal back, waiting for your win attempt, and then you turning it off and just saying, no, next game, sorry, you're done, is so important to have in this format right now. We were talking about going to later turns, and the later the later turns go, the more mana you're gonna have, right? So Myrel does cost 4 mana, right? But you're gonna have the 4 mana to pay in these later turns. If you're playing a control deck, I think you should be on Myrel. It's a solid body. It is a clock in itself. It has like the Najeela text where when it goes to combat, you make a soldier for every soldier you control. So you will eventually just overrun the board with soldiers if you have to play it as just Myrel and not a Grand Abolisher. And then it has the upside of being a Grand Abolisher. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, I also really like Myrel. I I think Myrel is also a card that, when I talk about tapping out for cards, like there are cards that are very telling when you tap out for them. Myrel is not a card, or technically is a card that's telling, but it's telling you the information you don't want to know. If you tap out for Myrel, the information is like, I can go for the win anytime I want, so I don't care that you know I'm telegraphing this right. You can counter this, but that counter spell is gone. And if it's a hard counter spell, it's gone for good. Like, you're not recycling it. You have very few hard counter spells in hand, and if you're using a free hard counter spell like Force of Will on this, then boy, am I in the clear to do whatever. Myrel's a card that is hard to justify countering, um, but isn't hard to justify removing. The issue is people aren't on as much removal. Still, even in tournaments, we're still running into the same problem over and over again, where people just don't have onboard interaction.
Or
People aren't.
their removal is bounce based, which does not help against Myrel as much because you'll just put her down again.
Yeah, she's literally a card that says like, yeah, bounce me at the end of that person's turn. Okay, my turn, Myrel. Like, it's the same Grand Abolisher in a sense. Not only the cards you mentioned to getting Myrel on board, you also have Eldritch Evolution,
Mm-hmm.
which is really good, by the way. The ability to Dockside Eldritch Myrel win is pretty insane. Um, I just I really like Myrel. Um, the upside is obviously her being a 3/4 is really crucial. This is a Tymna blocker. This is a Najeela blocker. This is a Sisay until she gets pumped blocker. Like, Myrel, I think is. I agree with your sentiment overall, right? Like, silence effects and anti spells on my turn effects are just so good, and to not be playing them is kind of a cope in the current meta. Because again, if you tap out for Myrel, the chances are your opponents probably aren't going for the win because they're afraid you have it on your turn. So now the table has to like stop what they're doing to interact with you before you untap, which is really good. If you play Myrel, let's say you tap out for Myrel, and your opponents are too scared to go for the win because, you know, it's a, well, I could try and go for the win, get stopped, and then on their turn they do just win and we can respond. So I'm gonna table that off. We're gonna work together, remove the Myrel. Well, now on your turn, now there's interaction that's been wasted. You know your opponents had to move away from a win attempt, depending on body language. Like, it's just a very good spot to be, I think.
I think it's also very important to know Myrel is a Tymna attacker.
Oh yeah.
She produces attackers and blockers when she attacks, so it's a very real situation. Like, I see a Myrel and I'm like, I could go on the Tymna game plan here, play Myrel, play Tymna, go to combat, draw cards, and just sit here. And if they destroy Myrel, that's fine. But if I'm playing on Myrel like turn 2 and it just sits there, people aren't going to think about it. And then suddenly it's like, oh, we can't interact. I'm like, yep, can't interact. I've had this thing on the board all game. I have been kind of flying under the radar with it, just using it as a combat engine, and then it becomes very relevant later on. I think having cards that are very multifaceted like that is also very important right now. We only have 100 card decks, so making my deck, feel like it has 103 cards in it at some points in the game is very powerful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think we said our piece on Myrel. What's your third card, River?
This is gonna be a shocker to people, man. This card, oof. Sword of Fire and Ice. I
Ooh.
think this card. I'm gonna scream this card from the rooftops. Um, I this card is so multifaceted. You should kind of like what you were talking about with Tyrell. If you don't know what Sword of Fire and Ice does, um, it pulling it up because I don't know what it does.
I know what it
um,
does.
yeah, Sword of Fire and Ice is an equipment that costs 3 colorless, 2 colorless to equip, and it says equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and blue. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage to any target, and you draw a card. This card does so much. One, protection is massive. Putting this on a key piece when you need it to act as protection, like let's say you have a Myrel, right, on board, making your Myrel a 5/6
Powerful.
is really good, but also giving it the protection to not be bounced um, is also really good. Putting this on blue commanders, specifically Malcolm, so that they cannot be pyroblasted, is also really good. Um, and then the thing that I love most about this card is one, it replaces itself. Usually the turn after it's played, which I think most people would say they're fine with, right? Like, you're never mad if you play a Mystic Remora. You have to pay an additional for Mystic Remora because it comes back to your turn and you draw like 1 or 2 cards off of it. Like 2 mana to draw 2 is still pretty good. This is a little different. It's 5 mana in total, usually just 3 mana and then 2 mana. Um, it dealing 2 damage is actually really big. Being able to get rid of Tymnas, getting rid of Nagilas, getting rid of Kinnins, just a big one. Um, Getting rid of Dorks or other pieces on the board like Dothies or Opposition's 3/2.
Yep.
Yeah, getting rid of Opposition Agent is so good. Um, I think the 2 damage a lot of times people forget, and then obviously like drawing a card. This card has so much to it that there's a reason why this card is powerful, insanely powerful in other formats, um, because of the massive amount of utility it provides, and because it can do so much. I think in a format where a lot of people have like, if you're in red, right, you're playing Pyroblast, you're playing REV, um, you're playing a Braid. If you're in blue, you're obviously playing like things like Winds of Rebuke or even Cyclonic Rift, sometimes as targeted removal, Ponkify. Like, being able to stop people from removing a thing you want removed, or even just making something bigger. So, like, this turns a creature into a Tymna attacker a lot of the times, um, where, oh, I have pro blue, and all you have on the field is your Tivit that's untapped. Well, cool. I have Pro Blue. I'm just going to swing into you. Or making your Crom a Pro Tivit or another Pro Crom, because now Croms can't swing into you anymore either. Plus, with the evasion side of it, it's really good. I will caveat everything I'm saying with, as much as I love Sword of Fire and Ice, this should not see play in every deck. This specifically should only see play in decks where you have access to a consistent flyer, usually Crom or Malcolm. I think this is a card that could see play in Blue Farm. This is a card that can see play in Malcolm X decks, like Malcolm and Tymna. I think it's really good there. Malcolm, really Malcolm anything. And it's just, I think, really beneficial personally. But that's just like, I love this card.
Yeah, I mean, it's a powerful card. I playtested in Blue Farm. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think it was what I was looking for. I think my deck is not the norm, though. I'm a very weird player, and I like weird things. I'm looking at actually putting Touch of Spirit Realm in my deck instead.
I mean, I think if we're evaluating both of these cards, Sword of Fire and Ice versus Touch the Spirit Realm, I would play Touch the Spirit Realm. I'm a very big fan of removal. Sword of Fire and Ice is just kind of anti-removal, which isn't always the best, and the amount you're paying for the payoff you're getting doesn't always feel instantly good. Whereas, like, I don't think there's many areas where Touch the Spirit Realm isn't just going to feel better.
Hmm.
So, like, I think Touch is definitely better than Sword of Fire and Ice. The Sword of Fire and Ice, I think if you can allot the slot for it, it becomes really good.
Yeah, I'm thinking Touch is going to be my next test. I know I've said it almost every episode, but I'm really testing stuff with Blue Farm, trying to find out what I think is gonna give me the best chance in the next set of tournaments I have going on. You know, I think Touch might be at least worthy of a test.
Yeah, it definitely is. Speaking of Touch, let's touch on your fourth card.
It's one of the oldest cards in Magic. It's plain old simple Lightning Bolt. 1 red instant, deal 3 damage to any target. I think that Lightning Bolt is kind of laughed at in this format because a lot of people think of it as like a burn card where it's like, oh, bolt to face, you know. In a 60 card format, that's a large portion of your life total. But in Commander, I think of it more as a 1 mana removal option. It just gets rid of Tymna's, Kinnon's. I hate Kinnon. We all know I hate Kinnon. It hits Sisay if she's not pumped. It hits Drannith Magistrate, Opposition Agent, Aven Mind Sensor. It's almost every relevant hate bear in the format. I think that's insanely powerful. You can't. It's like if I am going into an event and I'm like, okay, I'm expecting to see a lot of stacks, I'm bringing Bolt 100% of the time. Just Bolt the stacks piece. It's done. It's gone. It's another. It's another role player, right? It's not going to sit there and win you the game on its own, but it's going to show up, and when it shows up, it's going to do exactly what you needed to do when you needed to do it. Right? It's just going to pop that hate bear, pop that Tymna, pop that Kinnon, and we're on our merry way. It's 1 red mana. That's very cheap. Very low premium on red mana, you know? So I think that Lightning Bolt should see a little bit more play, especially if you're a commander reliant deck. Drannith Magistrate is a 3 toughness creature. I think you should be playing a lot of bolt effects if you're a commander reliant on deck. Like Ob Nixilis I don't know if it's running Bolt. I don't know if it was listed running Bolt. I think they should be. Your Commander Reliant deck in low colors that dies to Draenith. I mean, Bolt, 1 red mana, get rid of Draenith. It's done. I played Bolt and Blue Farm for a little bit. I switched it out for, I think, a Braid for a while, and I ended up trading a Braid out for Windfall. Just because I wanted the second wheel. But Bolt is always in the back of my mind as one of the best removal spells in the format, honestly.
Yeah, I also like Bolt. I'm low on it personally, but I think because I'm usually playing decks that don't care if I'm against a Bolt. um, like I'm always happy to see my opponents have bolts as an answer. Also, I think people underestimate how. Actually, same argument for Mana Leak, right? Three is a higher number than people realize. Three is such a crazy spot to be, right? Imagine you're against somebody with a one ring, and they have this immense trigger on the stack. Let's say you've been attacked. They're gonna take, let's say something realistic to where they shouldn't have already won at this point. Let's say 4 damage. Plus they have like mana crypt and stuff in the field. There's a good chance that they take like 7 damage and you deal the 3 to finish them off. Or the amount of times post Nas people just don't have life and you kill them because they had to go so low on life, or they have to use a tutor like a vamp or an imp, which is going to force them to lose life anyways. Um, I think Lightning Bolt is definitely positioned pretty well. The thing I like more than Lightning Bolt, you already said it, is a Braid. Um, I think a Braid being multifaceted is like really good. Being able to destroy an artifact or deal 3 damage is really nice. But um, like yeah, three is a higher number than I think people realize, and Lightning Bolt hits like so many good things. Dothi, Opposition Agent, Drannith Magistrate, Kinnan, Kinnan, Kinnan. Like, the edge cases for this card are really good. Um, and it's another card that shouldn't ever feel that bad in hand, right? Like, do you ever really feel bad if you bolt Sisay before they can get off the ground?
No.
Not really. Are you ever gonna feel bad if you bolt a Najila? Not really. Like, the amount of things this is going to hurt is really good. Somebody swings at you. Say you're against another blue farm player. Somebody swings at you. They have Tymna on board and a Crom on board. Swing at you with Crom. Go swing at somebody else with Tymna, and you bolt Tymna. Well, fuck. Yeah, you still take 4 damage, but like, they're not drawing that card anymore. And now the table can play a little bit more responsibly underneath of that value engine. Now they have to pay 5 mana for their, 2/2. Yeah, it's just never, I think, a good spot for like the opposing player to be in. Whereas like Lightning Bolt's just so good. I love this card. I used to play a fuck ton of Modern, and I used to have to play Auriok Champion to get around burn effects. Um, Turns out Pro Red is really big when you're a 1/1 creature. but
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree. I think Lightning Bolt's a card that should definitely see more play in decks that really need to get stuff like Drannith off the board. And also, again, this being instant speed is really good um, because let's say you tutor and somebody flashes an opposition agent and you have Lightning Bolt in hand, you can let the oppo resolve and then like bolt. So, like having another removal spell at instant speed is pretty good.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we all play swords. People are getting on path now. I think Lightning Bolt is right up there with them. I really do. Personally.
Especially in our format, right? Like, we're so low to the ground, most of the creatures don't have that high of toughness. There's a reason why when people talk about, this is a Tymna blocker, this is a Najila blocker, it's because, like, being able to block a creature, like, the 3 damage never matters. Having just 2 damage attached to a creature is good. Like, having a creature with 2 power is good. having an instant speed 3 power seems even better.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. We've discussed how Bolt is the secret best card in the format.
Yep.
What's
Get
your
your bolts now
fourth?
before they go up.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. What's your fourth card, River?
Um, I've said it before on here, I believe, or maybe I haven't. Mine is actually Teferi, Master of Time. For those of you who don't know what Teferi is, um, obviously the greatest planeswalker to ever exist. Teferi, Master of Time is a 4 mana, uh, 2 and 2 blue, for a legendary planeswalker Teferi, and his static ability is you may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi, Master of Time on any player's turn anytime you could cast an instant. And his starting loyalty is 3. His +1 is draw a card, then discard a card. His -3, which is really the main reason I play this card in Control Shells, is target creature you don't control phases out. And then his -10, which I have rarely ever used, only in cases where I'm having like hard force a win through some weird thing, um, is take 2 extra turns after this one. So this card is so much better because it's a planeswalker. Um, it's a card that, for some reason, draws in a lot of hate because of its -10. I think people are way too scared of like, oh, take 2 extra turns. Because yeah, I think if you take 2 extra turns, you should win. But a lot of times people aren't realizing that you're neg-3ing this card more often than not. If you have a Najeela on the board, on your upkeep, I'm just not letting you have Najeela. Or if you try to go for a creature combo win, like, let's say somehow, because this should never happen, it's a weird edge case, but let's say somehow a Protean Hulk is on the battlefield, and they've somehow taken a game action that isn't sacrificing it in a way that doesn't allow you to respawn. Being able to phase that out is insane. Phasing out commanders like Timnas, like Sisseys, Kinnons, are it. It's just a really good spot to be, and also cycling through your hand, discarding cards you don't really want to see or cards you want to see. This is a huge politics card, by the way. It is very much a hey, I don't care if you hit Teferi, that's fine. I understand being scared of the extra turns. Cool. I don't use it for that, but hey, if you think I do, more power to you. Usually I'm telling players like, hey, they have this on field. I would like to phase this out and to keep phasing it out. So I need you guys to not swing at this. It is going to get neg-3'd. So the way this would go is like, let's say the player whose stuff I'm phasing out is their, let's say I'm seat 1, they're seat 4. It's going to go plus on my turn, plus on the next player's turn, plus on the next player's turn. I'm going back to where I started on this player's turn, on my turn plussing again. So it's keeping itself in check, funny enough. And yeah, they can attack and remove it, but taking people off of a turn and seeing anywhere between 2 to 3 additional cards or 4 additional cards before this is removed is really big for 4 mana. A 4 mana cycle 4 pseudo remove a card is like a rate that, like, if this was an instant speed spell, that just said, draw 4 cards, discard 4 cards, face target creature out, I would play it, I think. But the fact that it's a planeswalker is just so good. Having a static, hard to hit, can only be swung at type thing is really good. And it also, like, isn't that difficult to persuade players away from swinging at this. So, like, let's say my opponent has a Crom. There's almost never a period of time where I need to phase something out on a blue farm player's turn. Because I was trying to think, hold on, about how a card is worded.
It gets to Grand Abolisher.
Okay, yeah. Other than Grand Abolisher, and like my Rel and stuff, there are very few times I actually need to phase out those cards, and those players are only ever going to remove, Teferi if they're going to end up playing these cards anyways. So, if like it's their turn, they go to combat, swing, kill the Teferi, and then play their like silencing effect is usually what the play pattern would be anyways, which is still a good rate for me. I've probably seen 1 or 2 cards before this, and when they go to swing at it, I can choose to either phase out their thing to try and keep my commander around, or to keep my planeswalker around, or I can cycle to see what else I'm going to find. It's a card I've liked for a very long time. I think this has been in my Teferi list, Teferi Temporal Archmage list, since it got released, and it has never came out. It has just been that good for me.
Yeah. It's a very good card. It does die to Bolt though, so bad matchup against Bolt.
It definitely does die to Bolt.
Dies to Dreadbore too.
It also is rough into Bowmaster.
Yeah.
But being able to phase out a Bowmaster is so pretty big. I have had people only keep my Teferi in check with their Bowmaster instead of like removing crucial things on board. So that's also a politics game. So like I said, like a very huge politic card. So
yeah, but Teferi cool.
So with Teferi out of the way, what is your 5th and final card?
So again, we all know I hate Kinnan.
Oh, no.
We all know that I think Sisay is the best deck in the format. And I actually do think that. I don't think it's blue form. I think it's Sisay. I think that this card is very powerful against both those strategies, and it is Containment Priest.
Oh, yeah.
It's 1 and a white for a 2/2 human cleric, and it says, if a creature would enter the battlefield and it was not cast, exile that creature instead. This card, I play it in blue form. I think it's a mainstay because my worst matchups are Kinnan and Sisay. And why are those my worst matchups? They don't use the stack. And then Containment Priest punishes them for not using the stack. I think Kinnan, everyone knows that Kinnan's a good deck. Everyone knows that Sisay's a good deck. But I think going in and being like, okay, I'm just going to hope that they don't do the thing is a bad plan to have, I'm going to remove Kinnan. I'm not always going to have remove for Kinnan. But Containment Priest will sit there and annoy them. I think that the fact that, in my opinion, the best version of Sisay is the Creature Tutor version, the one that Matt plays, because you win instant speed over top of everyone else's wins. I think that's the best Sisay shell, and I think that Sisay shell is the best deck in the format. I've seen Matt pilot it. He knows his deck insanely well, and that deck has an answer to everything, and can win at instant speed. Insanely powerful. I don't think I could play it because it's very complex and it's very situational, right? Like every game is a completely different battle to fight, but I think that the way the format's going, Sisay and Kinnan are going to be overtaking blue farm. If blue farm players do not stand up and go, time to get the big boy pants on and play some effects I don't really want to play, Time to be able to interact with my opponent a little bit more. Cut the NOS, cut all the goofy NOS stuff, and play a control shell. I know it's unpopular, but yeah, I think the fact that Containment Priest interacts with reanimation strategies, um, very powerful. I think the fact that it interacts with Pod, it just like sideswipes birthing pod strategies that are still in the format. Like that's fine. Birthing Pod is just shut out by the fact that this card sideswipes it. Um, yeah, it's a very very powerful effect, and specifically Blue Farm does not get hit by it at all. No card in its deck gets hit by it. So there's no reason Blue Form should not be on Containment Priest. Also, with Containment Priest, it's a little bit of a package. I think Curse Totem should be played more. I think people just I think people don't want to play Stacks pieces because they're sorcery speed, but Stacks effects are sorcery speed because they're so powerful, right? I I think that Containment Priest and Curse Totem should be in every blue form deck, especially with the prevalence of Kinnan and Sisay. I think it's foolish to go in and not and just hope to dodge those two decks. You know, I think you should be on effects to inhibit their game plan because they're going to be inhibiting yours with their effects.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a holdover again from when we come at these cards and when we come at these strategies. Morgan and I are always coming at this from the perspective of tournament play. So to make that very clear before I say what I'm going to say. I don't mean this in a way to upset people, although it probably will. Unfortunately, most people play CEDH casually. I say unfortunately because I think that breeds a lot of bad habits. A lot of people are still under the assumption that I have to win before my opponents win, and I don't really care what my opponents are doing in the meantime. Containment Priest was a card that sadly did not see play during Turbo Dockside meta. And Turbo Dockside meta, for those of you that don't know, are what I like to refer to as the finish meta, which was primarily ad nauseam strategies, but also looping Dockside strategies. Was people would play Baron, people would play Sabretooth. They would play ways to make. This was when I'm not even gonna try to remember the name of that mutate creature, but the mutate Lord Dracus combo with Dockside. There were a lot of strategies that revolved around making infinite treasures, and Containment Priest still didn't see play. And I think that's because people want, weirdly enough, value over the place of Containment Priest, but I have always disagreed with that philosophy. Um, I think Containment Priest is an insane card. This is a card that I had turned my friend Ben onto for his Tivit list, and was explaining that like this stops Eldritch Evolution. It's a card that sees a lot of play in our form. This is a card that stops, funny enough, polymorph effects. If you're going to polymorph for a Tidespout Tyrant, they can't anymore. Um, it also stops the battle for Ikoria.
Mm-hmm. The Invasion of Ikoria.
Invasion of Ikoria. Stops Invasion of Ikoria. This genuinely stops a lot of strategies. And the most prevalent ones, like you said, are going to be Sisay and Kinnan. But people forget, again, Reanimator strategies exist. There is a whole Kenrith Dockside loop that, Skirk Prospector, Dockside plus Kenrith's ability. There's just so many ways this card is good that I'm very glad this was on your list, because I sometimes forget this card exists when I'm not playing Stacks, or because again I primarily just play like blue strategies.
This card lives rent free in my head.
This card is just good. And I don't know if you've ever read the flavor text of this card, but it's some of my favorite. It just says some protection requires a bit of finesse. And that's literally what this card is. It is finesse. This is a card where I'm gonna spend 7 mana to activate my Kinnan, and it's like, okay, cool, Containment Priest. Since you tapped out for your Kinnan activation, um, would you like to pass your turn now? Like, this is a big middle finger to so much stuff. Like you said, Pod. This is a big middle finger to Pod strategies. Thankfully, Pod isn't like seeing as much play as it used to. But yeah, like Neoform. That's another big one. People forget that Neoform like Thoracle stuff is still really big. People have just been lower on it because people aren't playing bug strategies. Uh,
I love
but
bug
yeah,
strategies.
yeah, bug strategies are great. Um, it's this is very good. And then also like this hits Yisan. This hits like so many things that
It just
I think
sideswipes stuff. Like it sideswipes stuff that I don't even think about when I put it in my deck.
yeah, it's like a catch-all. Like yeah, sure, it doesn't stop commanders. Yeah, sure, it can get removed or whatever, right? Dies to bolt, but it it is a card that I think has been slept on for a very long time because again, unfortunately, we've already talked about it, so I won't hit on it too much. Is the fact that a lot of players still are playing to the ideology of I win before my opponents do. And when you're doing that, cards like this are going to get you 9 times out of 10. I've watched Containment Priest shut down so many strategies. Also, what people forget about Containment Priest is it has Flash. This is not a sorcery speed stacks piece. This is on par. People are going to hate this comparison. But in my opinion, this card is on par, not as good as, a little less good, but on par with cards like Opposition Agent or Notion Thief. Like, Opposition Agent is a lot worse at sorcery speed, right? Um, Notion Thief is a lot worse at sorcery speed. Funny enough, Containment Priest isn't. Containment Priest is a card that can be played sorcery speed, but it makes it a million times better because it has Flash. It is a very much reactive spell that people just forget. This dodges Force of Negation, this dodges Fierce Guardianship, this dodges Spell Pierce, this dodges so many cards that I think people just don't care to evaluate because why would they? And I think when they keep getting got by containment, they'll understand eventually to like nut up or shut up with it.
I freaking love Containment Priest, bro.
This is actually one of my favorite cards in Magic. I love it. The art is amazing. Again, one of my favorite flavor texts in all of Magic. Um, I love this so much.
I even played Containment Priest in my Thrasios Bruce deck while I was on pod lines. That's how
Yeah.
much I love this card. I was like, I don't care if it elbows with my deck. It's that
Well,
powerful.
technically it doesn't because you can just pot it
I can
away.
pot it away, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can pot
Like
it away. I've been a big proponent of Containment Priest since day one. You know?
yeah, me too. I really like this card. I remember when this card was like $20.
It I guess it's not anymore, but the Omnicat Invocation's like 30.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna pick it up because I think it's gonna be in blue form for the foreseeable future until Kanan and Sisay are no longer as relevant. You know?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the first printing of this card was in a commander set, wasn't it?
Ooh, I don't know. I can look it up real quick.
Commander 2014. think so. Because it got printed in M21, which was, I think, its first reprint.
Yeah.
No,
It was
because Invocation came out before then, right?
yeah, it was Commander 2014, then Invocations, then Ultimate Masters, then Course of 2021, and then the
Yeah.
alt art with Course of 2021, and then TSR.
Yeah, so Commander 2014, this card was just very expensive for a while. Again, it was like $20 at one time. Um, Obviously, not anymore. It's like 30 cents. But yeah, again, just really good card.
It's actually less than 30 cents. It's 25 cents.
Oh my god. I was looking at Time Spiral Remaster.
Die. Perish. The Commander 2014 version is a whole 32.
Oh.
I'll probably pick up the Amonkhet Invocation. It looks dope.
Oh yeah, and it's like one of the invocations that are the cheapest.
I'm gonna pick that and the Diabolic Intent up here soon.
I'm gonna get a invocation. Or not invocation. What are they called? Masterpiece, sort of Fire and Ice at some point.
If
But
I was
after
to
I
get a
finish
Fire and
building.
Ice, it would for sure be the drippy one, where the guy is holding the sword and it's all drooping with like lava and ice. The Devil Masters Borderless, that's what it is.
Hmm.
It looks awesome. It looks like a Dark Souls guy, Dark Souls character, which is very fun, very fun and cool. But yeah, Containment Priest, spicy. What's your last card that you put up on your list?
So there's a theme with my list. It is just primarily blue cards. Um, uh, Again, blue player at heart. I love these cards. Um, my fourth card is one that I have been trying to push for a while. It's a card that I feel like Kinnan players disagree with me. I think should see more play in Kinnan. But what do Kinnan players know,
Yeah, they play
right?
Kennen.
Yeah, they play Kinnan. Fucking dog shit. I love Clever Impersonator. For those of you that don't know what Clever Impersonator does, it is 2 and 2 blue um, for a creature shapeshifter. It says you may have Clever Impersonator enter the battlefield as a copy of any non-land permanent on the battlefield. This card for 4 mana is a One Ring, is a Crom, is a Timna, is a Rhystic Study, is
Mm-hmm.
a Smothering Tithe, is literally just keep naming good cards in the format. If you're in blue, this steals what other people are wanting to do. Um, this also becomes a Planeswalker. This becomes anything you need it to become. It is. And I love that. This is another opposition agent. This is another Notion Thief. This is just such a good card that, again, I think more people should play. I know why people are on Phyrexian Metamorph, because usually Phyrexian Metamorph players are also on Tezzeret, so that they can neg 4 to get One Ring, or create another One Ring um, with uh, Phyrexian Metamorph. But Clever Impersonator is just a card that I have been liking more and more. Um, I play Phyrexian Metamorph in my Teferi list because I can obviously search it out, War of Invention, Reshape, Transmute Artifacts, stuff like that, it onto the battlefield. But Clever Impersonator, I still think is like good. I think there is a case where I end up playing this card in my deck because I feel like there are very few cases where there isn't going to be something good for to use Clever Impersonator on. Again, the One Ring is like one of the biggest things in the format. A lot of people are on Fimage because it's, a low drop, but the rate on Fimage is so bad when it just dies to anything that targets it. Never really been a big fan of Fimage. Clever Impersonator is also another Dockside. Um, we have this weird thing in the format where people are no longer trying to win off of Dockside loops, so Dockside has just become a ritual. So more often than not, it is just on the battlefield. This card also pairs really well with Displacer Kitten if you have it. Um, yeah, it's just a good card. I really like Clever Impersonator. I think there are so many good cards in the format that being able to be a card in the format is just really good. You don't have to declare what it's going to be. It just enters as. So it doesn't matter. There could be multiple things that are good on the field. You cast Clever Impersonator, your opponents have to go, fuck, what are they using? What are they doing? And I think that's like a good spot to be.
Yeah, I think Clever Impersonator is a very powerful card. It's one of the very few things that can actually copy enchantments, which I think is very powerful. I think Court of Calling for my own heuristic study seems good. Just a thought, just a thought, or like a birthing pod in my own heuristic study.
Yeah, being able to tutor this onto the field is really good. Same thing with like an Eldritch Evolution. Just being able to have your own value on a card is good. Again, this is like, let's say you're playing this in Tivit. Well, you play this, and let's say somebody has a Tymna. Well, fuck. Now you're playing Tymna Crom. Like, you. Or if you're in like a Malcolm deck, right? That isn't on a Tymna. Or if you're on like literally anything. The format has warped so much around the One Ring and Rhystic Study that being able to have multiple ways to copy somebody else's thing and generate value from underneath of them is just so good.
Yeah,
And
it
again,
is.
Clever Impersonator is a creature. So just like with Containment Priest, this is dodging Force of Negation, Fierce Guardianship, Spell Pierce, like Dispel. This dodges so much counter magic, Flusterstorm, that like even if somebody delays this, which they probably should, if somebody has a counter spell in hand, let's say somebody goes tap out Rhystic Study and it doesn't get countered, but they counter your Clever Impersonator, I think something's wrong with that player. Because if they're ever in a spot to counter Clever Impersonator, unless they themselves are the person with the value engine on board, they're trying to deny you from getting ahead or from evening out, then I think it's like you're never in a spot where you really want to be countering Clever Impersonator. That's just like not the card you want to be using your hard interaction on.
Right.
At least like not on the stack, right? Like if this becomes a creature, yeah, sure, destroy it. If this becomes a One Ring and you have like resculpt in hand, exile it, sure. But like if it's on stack interaction, I'm not a big fan. I think the very few cases are like REB, you know, but even then, that's just not where you want to be. I think.
Yeah, I think it's. It depends on what it's copying, in my opinion. Right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
if you can reasonably guess, like, oh, they're gonna copy that dog saver that's gonna make them 15 treasures. That's worth my REB.
oh yeah. Um, in those cases, yeah. Another funny thing about Clever Impersonator, Spark Double, Phyrexian Metamorph, all of these creatures dodge Torpor Orb,
Yep.
and they all dodge Dress Down,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, something people forget sometimes, where Clever Impersonator is never entering the battlefield as a creature, unless you choose for it to enter as another creature, or as itself, but then it dies. Clever Impersonator enters as the permanent type, it is copying. There's never a moment where cards like Dress Down are going to affect this card.
Right.
Also, just to throw it out there because it's good, we've already mentioned these cards. This copy Silence Effects, Grand Abolisher, Myrel. Funny enough, this is a 4-mana Thoracle. If you or somebody else has a Thoracle on field, you stop their win attempt for 4 mana, for 5 to up to 6 mana, depending on if you have Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact in hand, you can win the game. Like, this is just such a well-rounded card.
Yeah, I mean, it's very powerful. Very, 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 very powerful. Clones are good.
Clones are very good.
Yeah. We have discussed 10 cards that should see more play. And why Lightning Bolt is, in fact, the best card in the format.
Yeah. I want to hear from our listeners. Obviously, by the time this gets uploaded, we'll have had a few more episodes come out. So, I would like for our listeners to give us in the comments their top 10 or top 5 cards that don't see much play or they don't see as much play that they think should. I want to hear from our audience and see what they think.
Yeah.
Also, I am going to be, I haven't started yet. I'm about to start working on a Discord for the channel, so that we can have a place to grow a community through our podcast. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else in the background.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're starting to upload on Spotify now.
Oh, we are uploading on Spotify. We can actually
But
start putting.
this will be like what, episode 4, 5?
I think this is episode 5.
Holy. Well.
I can check.
I think it's episode 5.
This is. This is episode 5. Yeah. Next episode preview is going to be about tournament data, which is a very interesting conversation. That I think the community isn't having. I think the community is having a lot of discussion about it. I think it's a lot of misplaced discussion.
Right.
There's a stigma around it. We will get into that in that episode, but it is a very sad thing to see, and it's definitely something we're going to talk about. Again, we're still at the end of, as of recording this right now, this is December 3rd, so we still obviously haven't been able to play any tournaments for a little bit.
I think I'm going to one next weekend.
Sick. We will then be updating you guys on that, because that is our goal. I don't know if anything's going on through Christmas weekend.
There's an event on the 30th though. I think I plan on going to as well.
Where at?
I can check real quick.
Because I have the 21st through the 1st off of, so.
Let's go to my calendar. So the 9th is up in Mishawaka. I don't know if you went to that event with us. I don't think you did. It was a very well-run event. There's a lot of good guys there. And then it's an event over in Illinois for cash. Let me go to my maps. What? Well, it's over in Illinois for cash. That's all I can find right now. I'll give you some more info after we're done recording. I can do a little more research on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we plan on starting to go to more tournaments again. like I keep saying, my schedule is very weird. I basically work seconds slash nights, um, and I may end up at the start of the year working a lot of overtime. So it depends on what happens. We'll
Overtime's
see.
good for the wallet.
Overtime is really good for the wallet, really bad for the depression. Um,
Really bad for the
but
tournament grind.
yeah, really bad for the tournament grind. Um, However, tournament reporting is still something that I'm very passionate about. Obviously, we have the podcast, so I will do everything in my power to still um, give my opinions, see what's happening, take in tournament results, and analyze through there, talk to more people through the community, and you know see what happens. But we'd love to hear from you guys. Obviously, always. Um, if there are any, I've said this every episode, and I will consistently say it. One, like, comment, subscribe. Whatever platform you're on, share us. It helps a lot. We're not doing this to get famous or anything, but having a reach is definitely something that is a good thing. I'll never turn that down. And also, um, I had a thought and lost it. So, like, comment,
Epic.
subscribe. um, but yeah, uh, anything else you want to touch on?
No, I think I'm good.
Well, that's it from us here at the grinding station. We will see you guys later.
Bye.